Yeah.
Yes.
Bado sijamwona ndani ya SGR aje bado. Bado hajapanda SGR.
Wow. So listen, this morning we've been talking about this issue about discrimination and racism, which is apparent. I mean, obviously, where there's smoke, there's fire. People want to contribute, and we ask you to call in 0722
208820
or 0734
2088.
In the meantime, we're discussing this in the studio with Naomi Barasa. She's she's a campaigns manager at Amnesty International, folks. Amnesty International. AI, and we will start talking about SGR, but also this adequate housing in Kibra, or the breaking down of homes in Kibra to make way for a road. But in the meantime, the SGR. Naomi, welcome to Hot 96.
Thank you.
I'm sure you are very aware of this story about wanton discrimination and racism on the SGR. Are you aware of it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, tell us what you know.
I would like to not to discuss the SGR issue because of media protocols, but generally I'll just talk a bit about the discrimination from a human rights point of view.
Okay.
The state of Kenya, under international human rights law, it's obligated to ensure that respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights is real, and the fact that the state is engaging in business with individuals and corporations that enhance discrimination is by itself not fulfilling the obligation of the state, because not any given state should allow its people to undergo discrimination. In human rights, we have a principle called equality and non-discrimination, so that in whichever way the state conducts its businesses, equality and non-discrimination must be ensured.
Yes, and yet we are letting this happen. Why?
I think it's just the failure of the state to protect its people. And so, by omission and commission, the state is squarely responsible for this.
And plus, we owe these people 300 billion shillings, you know that, so they can do what they want. Honestly.
Actually, it's almost that it's not ours.
It's not ours, no, until we pay it up, which will take, a few generations, but...
Shouldn't really matter. At any given point when the state is engaging with multinationals, corporations, other governments, international development partners, the agreement must be anchored within respect for human rights, protection for human rights, and fulfillment for human rights, so that any agreement must include internal safeguards that ensure that there will be no violation of human rights by whoever, and there will be no abuse by any individual.
Let's see if there's someone out there who has been a victim of this. Maybe they want to talk to us. Hot 96, you are on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, Jeff Angela.
Yeah, good morning. Who's this?
This is David Ngere Kimani.
Okay, punguza hiyo radio tafadhali.
From Eldoret. Okay. What I was trying to say.
Yes, David.
This discrimination has become too much. Actually, these Chinese, I don't know what we should do with them, because how can they come in our country and start discriminating these Kenyans?
Yeah, David, has it happened to you, or you're just talking?
I've seen, even here in Eldoret.
What have you seen?
They have taken even the construction that I'm sure Kenyan guys can do.
That is not discrimination. They were given the tender. Give us a solid example.
Yeah, they've been given the tender, but now even they are discriminating their workers.
How?
Workers there,
How?
The people who are working there, they have been harassed.
Is this something you're just hearing, or is this something you know,
No,
David?
I've seen.
Bring facts.
All around this country doing...
Huyu anaongea tu kuongea.
Bring facts. We need the facts.
If you don't have facts, then, just... kaa nayo. Because it's a serious matter.
It's very serious.
Naomi, this is serious. The discrimination of people.
Discrimination is not something you can just have an ear say.
Correct.
You understand?
Yeah.
We maybe first hand. You get?
Correct.
That
it
I
happened
was
to
working
me.
there. This is what happened to me. This is what...
Hot 96, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Bwana Chefi na Chalanyo.
Yeah, nani ndugu?
Mimi naitwa Maiwa Kipkemoi, napiga simu kutoka maeneo ya Kableng'engu, Bereti, Mogotio, Baringo County.
Okay.
Na SGR na wewe?
Hivyo wachana na hiyo machina. Wacha mimi nasema hivi. Unajua kusema ukweli tumanga. Unajua kampuni mingi ya Chinese imeingia hapa mchini na sisi wengi tumefanya na hizi kampuni. Na kweli kusema ukweli kuna mali inatuudhi kabisa.
Wapi?
Kama mimi nimeshafanya katika kampuni moja ya kujenga barabara na Chinese Kuna siku nilipa hiyo kijiko kidogo hiyo ya nani ya kukorogea kokoto. Kesho yake nikaambiwa lete hiyo kijiko na uchote kokoto hiyo tiba moja yote. Hiyo ni punishment kweli ya mtu kweli.
Ati ukaiba?
Nilipa hiyo kijiko ndogo.
Kijiko ndogo tu nilipa. Ukaambiwa ulete kijiko
Baringo County. Oh my God.
Aliba. Akaambiwa lete hiyo kijiko mara moja na ajaze kokoto kwa tipa mzima.
Na hiyo kijiko.
Hiyo iko sawa.
That is not discrimination.
That is okay.
That is punishment for stealing. On 96, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff and Jalas. How are you guys doing?
This?
Hello.
Yeah, who's this?
This is Kofi.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just wanted to correct something that you guys have mentioned. I mean, even if we owe Chinese the 3 billion, that is all good. But Jeff and Jalas, if you came to me, for example, and I gave you a loan for your wedding, does that mean that I own your wife? Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. I read these things in the newspapers. I've got no facts. But at least somebody investigated and came up with this thing, even if it's hearsay. I think Chinese are getting an easy pass over here. All those Chinese are, first of all, Chinese are foreigners in this country. And I go to so many countries in this continent, so I'm not going to say about being foreigners and everything else. But I'm asking a simple question. Why would we have Chinese people living in places which are specifically meant for poor people in this country? If they're really qualified for the jobs they are doing, they should be able to stay like foreigners. Or maybe they go to stay with Jeff in Kitisuru. But when you find them living in, Buruburu, some of them are living in Nyayo Estate. First of all, they are making rent to become very expensive. We don't know what these people do. They're living in one house, 10 of them. And I can assure you there was an episode in Ghana where these people rented, domestic houses, and all you had there was drug and flats. So we cannot let them run amok simply because we have, 300 billion. You don't own someone's wife simply because you help him pay dowry. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a very good point, my friend. Very, very good and valid point. So what's the solution here?
The solution is very simple, Jeff. We need somebody tough to be at immigration. Everybody who is coming to this country, there are classes of immigration, work permits. And people need to check what these guys are doing. First of all, Jeff, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that some of these Chinese people are not even qualified to be here just by looking at them. I mean, just by looking at them on the streets, you just see these guys are not supposed to be here. I go to these other countries simply because I'm a professional at what I'm doing.
Yeah, maybe they look at you in those countries and they say this person should not be here.
No, if you are here, Jeff, you know what I'm saying. You and Jalas, you've been in the U.S. for a long time. Jalas goes to everywhere else. If you are going there because you qualify to go there and you've got due respect for the locals, that's fantastic. But to come here, you find these guys eating dog meat, donkey in the villages and everything else. What the hell is going on? Let them stay in specific areas where they work, and as foreigners, let them stay in different places from the locals so we can really monitor what they are doing. We don't know that, Chinese, they look polite, but these guys are drug peddlers and slut peddling and all that. I can tell you, go to Accra, ask anybody, Labadi Street. There was a time that the way you see our girls on Koinange Street, you had Chinese on that. Okay, it's good for Africans to get some Chinese, something, but that doesn't mean that they take over and start treating us.
Wow.
Wow.
That's venting for sure. That's venting.
What?
Naomi, is there a solution before we move on to the
Evictions in
Kibera? Is there a solution for this?
I think the caller is raising very valid issues. Hilarious as it sounds, I think I got a few things. One, that there's need for regulation. Even as we engage in trade, in business and everything, with whoever it is, there's need for robust regulation and monitoring of the same. He talked about immigration, might not just be migration, beyond migration, even the agreements that are settled need to have strong safeguards, but also enforcement must be adhered to. So a strong monitoring unit within the country is useful. He's also raising issues to do with protection for the poor and the vulnerable people against any possible potential abuse. And I think, again, very critical, so that even as we engage, and it's interesting, he talks about foreigners should be restricted. Maybe that's not so, because they are human beings, and freedom of association and freedom of movement is a human right.
Sure.
But then how do they conduct themselves? Is it within a dignified manner? Does it infringe on other people's rights or not? So that is very critical.
Yeah.
And finally, he is talking about ensuring that we get quality, so that we don't just make Kenya a market for dumping. I think those are critical issues the caller has raised.
Yeah. And let's keep in mind that phase 2 of the SGR is already underway.
Yes.
The president was inspecting the site not too long ago, and he told them, look, you need to finish by next June, because I plan to take this train to Narok County next June. So, the work continues. I
think the way the SGR issues has been established, not just for the discrimination, even the way they conduct themselves within the communities living along the SGR is quite troubling. A lot of contempt for the residents. There's a lot of disregard for due process. But I think this is enabled by our state.
Yeah. Wow. It's not going to go away. Maybe we'll continue in the next hour. What do you think, huh?
Yeah,
if we switch gears to what's happening in Kibra right now, and road expansion and lots of demolitions. And Naomi, your thoughts? I mean, the residents had been warned. Let's face it. They had been warned that this is going to happen. Now what?
Okay. It's true they had been warned, but so what if they had been warned?
So it's time to move. You've been told, you've been given 90 days.
You've been told.
Guys, we're coming through with this road here. Talk any.
Okay. I want to start by saying that development is good, and we are not opposed to development as Amnesty International. But the UN member states are governed by UN basic principles and guidelines that ensure due processes whenever a development project has to happen. And the due processes, the guidelines are very clear on the process that should be undertaken whenever such a project is to happen. Also because development must not underdevelop others, but also because human rights are very important. And in a situation where the development is prioritized more than human rights, then that development should be null and void. So number one, just informing people that we will be passing through here is not enough. Remember, the people who live in such neighborhoods are quite vulnerable. They might not even have any other option. So when you tell them, Jala stalker, what are you telling that person?
Yeah, but how did you get there, you Jalas? You just happened on there one day and you started building your house, not knowing that, you're a squatter. This is a road reserve.
It really doesn't matter. The obligation to house people is the obligation of the state. The right to adequate housing is a human right, as good as the right to life, as good as any other human rights. The 30 human rights within the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So when you think about Jalas squatting along some corridor in Kibera, you must also remember that they have the right to adequate housing. And primarily, this is the obligation of the state. So the fact that people are living the way they are living in the slums is even a failure by the state itself. So number one, if the state thinks they need to do development, which is acceptable, which is good, they need to ensure that, number one, the people who live here are genuinely consulted to understand what are their specific needs and how would the development affect them, impact them negatively.
Okay, Naomi, that's not going to happen. That sounds good on paper. It doesn't look likely to happen.
It should happen.
It's not going to happen, Naomi. And these guys will be protesting. They'll be probably blocking the road, burning the cars and stuff. What's the solution? I mean, they should be relocated.
I think it shouldn't sound. It shouldn't sound too ideal to happen because it has happened elsewhere. So what needs to happen? There's a document called RAP, Resettlement Action Plan. The Resettlement Action Plan is usually developed by the people, the agency developing that part of the city. And this document basically stipulates the procedures that will be followed, how the people will be handled, how the mitigation of the impact will be handled. It also stipulates the environmental impact of the project, social impact, and then seeks the audience of the people to see how it can mitigate this so that the development does not leave people worse than it found them. And this is an obligation. The state has ratified this international convention, International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, which outlaws forced eviction. And forced eviction is basically an eviction that happens and displaces people without their consent and without due process, observing due process. So Kenya has said, we as a state, we will not do this to our people and we will follow these procedures. And so accountability requires that Kenya complies with what it has said it will do. So it's not utopia, it's possible. Kura, the Kenya Roads Urban Authority should follow this because it's a state agency. It's under the same obligation. They have done this elsewhere. So it's possible to do this. But now, sometimes when the affected people are not very aware of these rights, then they just come and tramp over their rights.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Naomi, let's face it, nobody cares. Nobody cares. You're saying they should, but this is too idealistic, and the riots or demonstrations will go on for 2 days, and then the
road will come.
I think, Jeff, it's wrong to say that this is idealistic. It's in our constitution. So once we have ratified an international treaty, we come and domesticate it. We have domesticated it in our constitution, the Bill of Rights, Chapter 4, Article 43, 1B. We have, which is to say, we are able to do this. So it is not supposed to be ideal. So what we need to do as a citizenry is hold our government to account to what it commits itself to do. So this is not really idealistic.
Let me ask you. So today, there's somebody on a bulldozer.
Yep.
Okay? Driving through Kibra. Will you bring for them the constitution
and say
and the
30,
people watu wamewamtuma wako sijui wapi huko? What will we do to stop
among
this?
The things that we can do, if a driver sets off to Kibera on a bulldozer, among the things that we can immediately do, of course, is to rush to court. At that point, you cannot stop the bulldozer by protest, but a court injunction can. But most importantly,
have we got one already to stop this? As Amnesty International, what have you guys done?
So as Amnesty International, we have engaged mainly in advocacy and lobbying the duty bearers. But there are many other actors who are doing different things. There's Katiba Institute, which has expertise in litigation that is looking into this whole process. But there's also engaging the multi-sectoral agency, which is, again, undertaking a mandate that is not theirs. The multi-sectoral agency is actually supposed to ensure that the unsafe buildings in this city, we see buildings collapsing every day in Huruma, where else? I mean, they're supposed to ensure that compliance on building codes happen. They're not doing that. So now they're issuing,
as we speak right now,
they're issuing
with all
wrong
these
notices.
with all these agencies that you have, the bulldozer is already in Kibera.
Yes, so that bulldozer is even an illegality, because within the law, you cannot give people 14 days notice and ask them to leave for example. That is an illegality by itself. So we are saying the multi-sectoral agency is actually performing a wrong mandate. That is not the mandate it has. Its mandate is squarely to ensure that building codes in this country are adhered to. That is not what they are doing. So anyway, I was saying there are actors who are already engaging the litigation route. And then Amnesty, we're engaging in advocacy and lobbying. The community itself is exercising its constitutional
right of picketing.
picketing, which is, in
And
my
by the
opinion,
way,
very
this
right.
happens everywhere. Huh? Not too long ago in Kitisuru, they decided to build a bypass right through from Gashie all the way to Wayakiwe. Right?
Yes,
About
I
7-8 kilometers.
Yeah.
Do you know the amount of luxury, high-end homes that were demolished in that 7-8 kilometers?
1,001 of them.
Oh, many. And residents tried to protest, huh? The residents' associations tried to protest. The bulldozer came. The bypass is almost complete now.
Yes.
It's almost complete.
Let me tell you one thing about these bypasses in the different neighborhoods. It's very unfortunate, and initially we were discussing discrimination. When it gets to high-end neighborhoods, the level of engagement, the level of negotiation is totally different. But when you look, the same bypass you're talking about passed through Deep Sea, a small slum in Westlands, just behind Westgate. They treated them so differently. But thank God this community is quite aware of its rights, and it's given Kura a run for its money. So Kura has had to hold everything as they negotiate with this community. And right now this community is actually exploring land that will be bought by Kura because they have a right to be relocated.
Yeah. Let's take a break, come back, talk some more. We're talking to Naomi Barasa. She's the campaigns manager at Amnesty International. Goodness gracious me, I tell you, your work is cut out for you, my dear. Work is cut out. From discrimination to racism to evictions. It is crazy out
But
there.
all these agencies, today, I would easily tell you, it's just the capacity building.
Domo too.
Capacity building.
Domo.
Yes.
Isn't that what Lucy used to say?
Can you imagine now, the evictions are going on, and they're meeting. Some of them are meeting in hotels here.
Yeah, at
capacity
Kempinski.
building and trying to see how they're litigating. Uselessness. I don't want to lie to
By
you.
the way,
I've been part of this nonsense.
You're using very big words.
I've been part of this nonsense
Of
before,
capacity building.
where we sit down and discuss how
Mitigation.
we mitigate and do what, yet evictions are going on.
Happening.